Okay, I'm over here getting things organised for assembling the hydraulic lift cover. There's just a few interesting things. Now, I have a new Sparex lift cylinder, and I have a new Sparex piston and new Sparex S41848 sealing rings to go on the piston. And I've just put one of the Sparex rings down the bore here, and when I bought some stuff off an old bloke recently, this was in it, and this was Bepco 692-1 piston ring 18447M1. And I thought, well, this is the old school Bepco packet, and the old fella hadn't been in business for quite some time when I bought all this. So I thought, well, let's just compare apples with apples, I suppose. So I've put the Bepco piston ring in, and I've measured the gap at 15 thousandths of an inch. So when it goes in the bore and you push the piston down so you know the ring is even in the bore, it had 15 thou. And I thought, well, I'll measure the Sparex ones, because I thought, oh, well, you know, I've got these parts to use up, what should I do? And the Sparex ones are 9 thou gap. So there you go, that's from 9 to 15, like on the 9 thou, see the oil, I left this piston like this just to show you. Now, I'll get my little pointer here. Now, the oil's on top of the piston here, and so in this case it comes down there, just travels there and across there. And so the bigger the gap, this is out of the 35 actually, the bigger the gap here, the quicker your linkage will go down. So, and having them lined up like this, it's like lining your piston rings up on your engine. It's just a silly thing to do. So what you actually want is, let's just say you start at 12 o'clock. You want one at 12 o'clock. And in saying that, I should probably clarify myself a little bit. I don't think it's good with the lift cover on the top here and your lift cylinder down here. I don't think it's good to have a gap down the bottom there where all the weight goes. So I would possibly put one gap here, the next one at 180, so the oil has to come along, has to go all the way around there to find the next gap, and then the next one, so if this was the first gap, that would be the second gap, and I'd have the third gap not exactly in line with this, but just over here somewhere, just so the oil has the longest route to travel. So it has to come down here, it meets the ring. So it finds the gap, goes through and comes onto this land here. Then it has to go all the way around and find the next ring gap and come down. So I just thought that was interesting. I thought it was worth cranking the camera up. The Bepco ring has got more wear than the Sparex ring built in. Now, I haven't at this stage looked up the specs in the book. It was just that while I was looking for my parts, you know, I have a drawer with all my parts in, and I had put these Bepco piston rings in the same drawer because I thought, oh, well, same. Okay, we'll pop that aside for the moment. Now, I'll try not to break those rings. Now on the rollers here, I'll just shift my chair around a little if I can. On these rollers here, this was the FE35 one, and it come through there, and I've taken that off. There's a little split ring there, and I'm going to use the push rod here. Now that's quite rusty and pitted here. The black that you see is the CRC rust converter, and as for the length, look, they're very close, so I don't think, perhaps it will matter, but I don't think it will matter really. The roller in here, that's getting worn, you know, it's rusty pitted, so we don't want to use that one. The roller in this one here, look, there's a couple of marks, but there's nothing there really. And when this pin comes through to hold the link on the other side, this roller actually pivots on it. But it doesn't pivot on the skinny bit, it pivots on the fat bit. So when you put your roller through the hole there to line up, and you bring him right through, that sits flush, and that gives us room out here to put this lever on. So if we put the lever on there, push that right up as far as we can go, and we'll see if we can just get one of these little clips started. They're a bit of a fiddle, I tell you. And then I have to hold the pin forward and push that little clip down into its groove. And that'll hold that on. So we've got a nice roller there for when we get to assembly. This part here, like we've got nice clean rollers. That's out of the 35, that's a good thing. We have the shaft here off Sparex, it's a Sparex shaft. These bits here, I may not chuck them away, because if I ever need to make a pin or a roll, you could make this roller out of a bit of 4140 and quench it and make it nice and hard. So they can go up there. The side bracket off the 35 is the one we're going to use. The wear in the, oh well, in these fellas, I don't even know what you call them, in the forks I suppose, was just unreal. This needs a wash up yet and a tidy up, so that's just up there waiting for a turn. I have to fit the piston rings to the piston, and what I'm doing next is all these studs here, they're going to be Loctited in place. A lot of times they're not, and you play with tractors, you go to undo this bolt here to work on the hydraulics and it just doesn't happen. Yeah, just the stud comes out, and that's what happened with both of these tractors. If I grab this one here, they usually come out like that. So we're going to try and fix that with this one. And I do have a stud extractor here, and now the long bolts go to the opening in the cylinder, the short bolts go to the back, because that's the front of the tractor and this pushes back to lift the arms. So I'll pop a bit of Loctite on there. That looks like quite a bit of Loctite, Lance. And I'll just use this stud extractor here. And it doesn't want to bite in there very well. Okay, so I'll do all the other studs there. I'll put the piston rings on. I probably won't show that. I'll just use the ring expander like on that I use for the engines. I'll separate the gaps, so we might have one gap there, one gap at 180 from there, and then just not quite lined up with the top one, just off a little bit. And once the piston's going up and down, I don't believe they will move. I think they'll be a good thing. Once we've done that, we'll start getting into a few of these other parts and just have a look at how we pull them apart and just get them ready to do the lift cover assembly. Okay, so here's our lift cylinder. We've Loctited all the studs in, we've cleaned up all the nuts ready for when we assemble it later. we've put the piston in with the rings staggered. So there's one here, one there, and one just up there. So the first one was here, the second one was there, the third one was up there. So that's okay. Now this housing here, this set of levers and all that off the 35, we're using that on the 65 now. The other levers were just too worn and ratty. These adjustments, we haven't touched anything there yet. That whole plate just gets held on with a couple of 3/8 UNC bolts that are 9/16 spanner fits. So that's that ready to go. So we can slide that up over out of the way until we come to assembly. Now just a point of interest for this shaft here, this Sparex lift shaft. Now it can just roll away on its own there, no worries at all. Okay, so we have these Sparex bushes. The bush's number is S41425. And so how it works is in the housing we have a bush, then we have an S1955 O-ring, that O-ring sits nice and snug on that shaft there. In the housing there's a bit more pressure there, and then we have another S41425 bush goes on there. So the 35, 65, a lot of them have the same. I think these even fit in the TE20. So that's your bush setup, and then your lift arm goes here, your bell crank, this fella here goes there, and away we go. So we have that there, the exact same thing on the other side here, and yeah, that's all ready. We have all the parts there ready to do that. So we come to the draft link, or the draft spring now, and you would have seen a little bit of footage on the disassembly of me heating all the housing and bashing the nut. So this is the 35 one. They have a little hole through here, and that lines up with a piece in the end of the housing there. So I can probably show you here for the Sparex one. You have the holes in through here to line up the thread that goes in through the guts there. So those holes there are the ones. So that's an S. Look, I can't even read that anymore. I can't tell you. It's in the Sparex bloody catalogue. Okay, but once you've taken that out, this one's loose. Now, I've had these where you've actually got to cut through the spring and replace this bolt. We're a bit lucky here. This one's loose to a point. And hopefully oh, come on. Hopefully there's a lot of this that's usable for us. This is a pretty easy kill. Like I say, some of these you just have to bite the bullet, cut down between the spring here and cut this long bolt. Okay, so this here, you can see this one's been all chopped up and we don't know what's happened there. Looks like a grinder. So we have this new one to fit there. We have the nut. This nut takes the end movement out once it's been assembled. This is the draft spring, that needs a big wash. And yeah, this sits up against there and sort of holds it in. That's your bolt and your cup, and look at all the dirt in there. So what that does is that little black push rod before, and my hands are too dirty, I don't want to pick it up now. As the link pushes back on the top link here, it pushes on that rod and that helps it to lift, so draft works. So look, all in all, this is looking usable. I believe that's usable. This is certainly usable. There's a rubber normally sits over there. This spring is certainly reusable. It just needs a good bath. Now this where it pivots here, you'll notice that they're loose there. This should pivot easily on there, and it doesn't for some reason. Bit of rust, it does. You can move it a bit, and in the tractor it sits like that, and this goes onto your main lift cover, and then your top link sits here, and with this fixed, this pushes back and forth. The bottom bit pushes back and forth. So what we need to do is press these out. So they have a big hole in here, and we press them out. So I may not do that on camera, but I will need these pieces here. And out of the 65 and the 35, I'll try and pick the best link up here with the least wear. That's got a lot of wear just there. So anyway, we'll go and do that, and yeah, when we come to assemble this, we'll bring the camera back once we've done all the clean-ups and done all that sort of thing, got organised. Okay, I've got all this apart. Now, this is the old piece. I just popped it straight into the bandsaw and chopped the ears off, because when you're trying to press these out, they flex and they muck around, and I just thought, bugger it, that was a quick and easy way to do it. The part was buggered anyway, so no big deal. So now we have to get these two bushes back in that hold this together. So what we need to do is place this with that cut out upwards. So when the top link comes in, it just sits in there like that. It supports the top link. So we know that has to go that way. This piece here, it has to go this way to line up with the tags on the top of the lift cover. So we need to get these pressed back in again so that this can pivot on there, and it pivots on these bushes here. You can buy these aftermarket. There's very little wear on these. You can see a bit of wear there, so I might just turn them upside down for that. And so this one here, if you keep a line straight up and down here, turn that to between 10 and 11 o'clock. And then on the tractor, when you come to put the pin in, you can just pop the pin in sideways. That's how they were. But I'll probably take this away over to the press and do it. Before I do, I've got a little piece of steel here. That's an eye that Sparex sells. It's not for this, I just use it for this. And so that goes just between it. And look, the only reason that is there is to stop these two arms collapsing as I press the parts in. Now, by bringing it down in deeper here, well, that ensures that when we push these in, they don't come in too deep and end up too narrow, that they come in too tight and we can't get the top link on. So we'll just check ourselves again. That one goes in at about that's just to locate it, not to push him in. And this one, it doesn't matter. Where's the wear? The wear's up there, so probably this way. We'll just see how we go. Actually, that's bumping in there nicely. Normally you've got to fight them. All right, let's see if we can get it, eh? So that's an old PDO spacer off a Fergie TEA20. I'll just see. Not quite level there yet. Okay, that's level out here. Yep, it is just level in there. That's a good thing, Lance. Okay, let's just check this again. Between 10 and 11 in there somewhere. So we'll pop this on that one there now. We might just see if this one wants to go in as easy as well. Yeah, look, you've got to be happy with that. So that's just flush with the inside. The outside here is pretty flush. There is a little bit of movement there. And look, we're not going to get too worried about that. Now this piece here, and before we go any further, we'll just check that the top link can go in, and yep, it can. Bloody beauty, Lance. How do you do it for the price? Okay, well, we may as well keep moving along here. So this rod here that does the adjustment on the takes the end movement out. Now this new Sparex yoke that I bought, that I got from Sparex, the holes need to go, the holes need to go through, so when you knock a pin in to lock it in position, you can knock that pin out again at a later date. These holes didn't line up, and as I checked that, they didn't quite line up. So I've actually run I can't remember if it was 4 or 4.5 millimeter drill through there, and once the adjustment's right, you can see you have a hole here and a hole here. Once the adjustment's right, hopefully you can find the nearest hole and drop a pin through there, and that will stop this from moving. But before we do that, we'll get a bit of this. I've never used this before. Brake and caliper grease used on brakes, prevents brake noise and will not damage rubber or plastic components. So we're going to go with that. Just excuse me for a second, as a form of rubber grease. So this rubber, that's the rubber boot that goes on over here, and once you've got all the adjustments done, it pops in over this big nut there. But at this stage, we need to put it on, and this lip here sits down into that groove there, and then the outer lip, once it's all assembled, sits in this piece here. So what we'll do to start with, we'll pop a bit of this grease around here so that the rubber wants to slide easy. CRC gave me that to try, so anyway, we'll try it today. It's not on a brake job, but don't tell anyone. Okay, so if we get that, stretch him over. Okay, so that's right down over there. Now, we have this piece here. I might just put a little bit of grease in there just to make it easy to turn. So there's a bit of a cone in there. And you can see the cone on there to keep it nice and free there. Look, that goes in there like that. The big spring here comes in over the top, locates on that little shoulder there. And we nearly forgot that. That has to sit up there out of the way somewhere. And what I'm going to put in here is a bit of copper anti-seize, because these threads, they do seize up on you. Geez, you got some pressure. And the other thing is with these threads, I've actually run this thread right up through and back and come in the other way just to make sure it's nice and free. So you don't want it being a bit tight and a bit difficult to get on with. Now, this spring also sits against that shoulder there. So we have to take it up until there's no movement there. So if we pop a screwdriver down here, hold some pressure against the spring. And so we just take this up until the movement goes out of the spring, and the spring is jammed between here and here. And look, I just had a read of the book just to, I try and give you accurate information, and these jobs I don't do on a daily basis. I often read the book in between to just try and check. One says make sure there's no end float here and it's firm to tight, and the other one says take up the end movement and make sure you can move it with your fingers. So I don't know, I can't remember. So all we can do at the moment so that feels firm. So I can turn that very easily. I'll just take him up a little bit. Okay, so that's quite firm there. I might just back him off a little. Okay, so we can turn that. It's reasonably easy to turn. I might pop a bit of oil on the ends here. Okay, there's definitely no movement. The movement's so if I have a look, the pin should go in there. So I think yeah, I can just see in there where if we poke this down through there, you can see, can you see that? It's coming out there. Yeah. So what I'm going to do for the moment, I don't really want to pop that pin in yet in case I feel I need to adjust it. I probably shouldn't need to adjust it, but I think I'll just leave it there for the moment, and I'll have another look when we come back to doing it. A little roll pin in there would sit in nicely. Now once you've got this pin in, and I probably should just do it, well then there's a cap that sits in here, and I don't have the cap at the moment, but I do have them ordered. I've ordered a selection of corks for the threads that when I paint the tractor, the threads I don't want paint to get up, I can clean up in the thread, I can grease them up, put a cork in, then paint the tractor and it'll be okay. So for the moment, I'm going to call that done. These bolts here, they were the ones, they actually sit in there, and that's where it pivots on the top, so it actually sits this way, yeah. So these ones come in from inside here, and where the rock shaft housing comes down here, you do this up, and it just uses these as a pivot point. Now these holes are a little worn, you can feel the wear in them, probably 10-15 thou. I do have bigger ones of these, aftermarket ones. I'm not sure whether I should use them or not. I'll just go and grab them and show you. And here they are there. These had a smooth head on the outside, and being a wearing part, you know, for a pivot, I can imagine that would be better than a knurling. And these aftermarket ones, the nuts are a bit too big. But look, that's neither here nor there. You can pop these in the lathe and buck around with them. But look, for the moment, I think I'll just use the originals here. I think I can adjust the hydraulics with it like that. So that's that bit done. So I'll tidy up here, and the next thing we'll have a look at is the quadrant. Like, this has got good rollers on it and all that. So, but I may, I think I'll pull it all apart and just run through it. There's no use half doing it, and see how we go. I got, oh no, this must be off the 65. Some of these get hard to get off sometimes, so I do have a spare here, spare genuine one. Oh, this pin here. This pin here is the top link pin. Now, this, I may paint this separately. I haven't made my mind up yet. And we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 links, and it has a split pin that goes down in through there, and that holds, that retains this pin. And the interesting thing is that the chain on the other side here that the linch pin goes on, it's a smaller link. I've gone outside and I've checked a couple of tractors I have outside, and it's right. So there's the difference. The linch pin has the small one. See, I'm looking for a new chain because this one is all crushed up and buggered. This had a bent link in it, but I've put that in the vise and bashed him around and straightened it up. But it will get a, it'll get a bead blast before we deal with it. And look, I may just paint that before I fit it. All we have to do to fit it is sit it in there and bend it open, and that's okay. It's an original pin. It looks okay, and I've got some original looking linch pins, you know, the pear-shaped ones. So, okay, we'll tidy up, and yeah, we'll come back, I don't know, in this video or another one, and we'll work through this and see what we can find.